Stranger Things has always been one of the biggest moneymakers for Netflix, and it seems like that status isn't going to change anytime soon as we gear up for Season 4. However, a new detail has revealed that maybe the show isn't as profitable as we initially thought. First up, Stranger Things Season 4 will cost a lot of money. It's always mind-boggling to hear about any big show's budget because you can't really wrap your head around how dozens of millions of dollars are spent on a single episode for a TV series. But Netflix's spending for Stranger Things Season 4 goes way beyond anything that you'd consider reasonable. So, how much does it cost? Well, to make one single episode of the sci-fi thriller, the streaming service has to spend $30 million. The number, which was revealed earlier by the Wall Street Journal, gets even more insane when you think about how much it costs to make the entire season. You don't have to whip your calculators out though, as we've already done the math for you. Since the fourth season of Stranger Things is supposed to have 9 episodes, the final spending on all those episodes adds up to almost $270 million. Now, we don't know about you, but it does seem like spending $250 million on a TV series is kind of an overkill. Also, you've got to think to yourself at that point, is the series even profitable? Next, Stranger Things' big budget may cut into its profits. Most streaming services dish out the big bucks for their best shows, and that makes sense. These shows are not only super high quality, but also are kind of the representation of the streaming service in a way. Like, you can even say that a show like Stranger Things is the quote-unquote flagship title for Netflix. With that said, it does seem like these streaming services sometimes tend to make bad financial decisions, splashing out way too much cash on something that is totally not worth it. For context, the entirety of the first season of Stranger Things only cost around $60 million to make. Now, Netflix is willing to spend that on literally 2 episodes. And it's not like the show wasn't successful before. If anything, it seems like the popularity of the show has dwindled over the past few years. Anyway, let's suppose that the streaming service made $500 million from the first season of Stranger Things. Now, are there any guarantees that the massively increased budget will result in more earnings? Not really, because at some point the returns start to diminish. So, is it really worth spending so much money on a TV show? Again, probably not, but Netflix might actually not have a choice. And the Stranger Things cast is taking up the bulk of the budget. Exactly where is all this money going though? Surely a show like Stranger Things couldn't be that expensive to make, right? Yes. It has some decent CGI, and the Upside Down looks cool, but when Disney is able to make Star Wars shows for less money, you have to think that a big chunk of the budget is not being spent on special effects. And you'd be right to think that. According to the same Wall Street Journal report, the majority of the $30 million per episode budget is actually going into the pockets of the actors. We all know how big the Stranger Things kids have gotten over the past few years. Actors like Millie Bobby Brown have almost transcended the show, which is probably why they're so expensive to work with now. However, despite their fame, it's not like they're A-list actors who have starred in multiple roles outside of Stranger Things. And when Disney's able to hire big actors for less money like Tom Hiddleston and Oscar Isaac for their TV shows, does this spending really make sense? But it's not always about the money. Yes, we know that splurging out on a single show when you're unable to support other smaller series can be a hard thing to grasp, but let's look at it from another angle. Over the past few years, the creators behind Stranger Things have put in the work for Netflix, and they've proven to be incredibly successful for the streaming service. And of course, they've done this with a limited budget. Also, if you've been watching the show over the past couple of years, you'd know that we still haven't really seen a deeper dive into the Upside Down dimension, and most of our time in there is just mere glimpses. So, with the increased budget, it seems like the streaming giant is ready to reward the series creators and let them loose. And this news should excite us because now the showrunners will have the freedom to execute their vision that they've never really had before. You don't have to take our word for it though, as the Stranger Things creator, Ross Duffer, had similar things to say about the future of the series. According to him, this increased budget will most definitely lead to something far beyond anything we've ever seen from the series yet. He also said that unlike previous seasons, the crew will spend a lot of time in the Upside Down, and we'd get to see the strange monster dimension in its full glory. Also, with this massive budget, they don't have to rely on cheaper CGI either. Instead, almost 90% of the show will be built around practical sets, making it so much more believable. Now, we don't know about you, but everything about this sounds super positive, and it definitely seems like the extra budget will be put to good use. Is Stranger Things now the most expensive show ever? Of course, when you see a budget for a TV show that rivals some blockbuster movies, you gotta think about whether this is the most expensive series in the world. Well, the answer to that question is kinda. For now, Stranger Things, with its $30 million per episode budget, is definitely a part of the upper echelon of expensive shows. In fact, even the biggest Marvel or Star Wars shows from Disney have lower budgets than this. For instance, Loki, which had some insane effects and a stacked cast, had a budget of $25 million for each episode. And other big budget sci-fi shows like Halo also fall around the $20 million ballpark. In terms of sheer profits though, you can't forget something like Squid Game, a show that took the entire world by storm and set records for Netflix. And for context, the Korean show made almost $1 billion in revenue, a number which is far greater than any Stranger Things season could imagine. The cost of that show? Well, only $2.4 million per episode, which is just an insane value. However, despite its incredibly high budget, Stranger Things is still not quite the most expensive show in the world. That would be the upcoming Lord of the Rings show show in development at Amazon Prime. Called The Rings of Power, the fantasy show reportedly has a budget of $60 million per episode, which is twice as much as Stranger Things. Despite the massive gulf between them, though, the Netflix show still slots in at number 2. But then again, is it even close to being as big of an IP as The Lord of the Rings? Probably not. Next, Netflix needs to figure things out ASAP. When we look at Stranger Things Season 4 in a vacuum, things don't seem that bad. After all, if you're not going to spend the most amount of money on your biggest series, then what is even the point, right? But things start to look kind of grim for Netflix when you look at everything else that's been happening as of late. For instance, the streaming service only announced last month that it had lost over 200,000 subscribers, which led to a massive drop in the company's stock price. And their woes didn't stop there either. To cope with this loss, Netflix has decided to put other smaller shows on the chopping block. In fact, the platform also announced last week that it would be cutting down on its animated productions, which are arguably one of the biggest draws of the service. Not only that, but the constant price hikes and a lack of good quality content have also driven audiences away. And when your competitors like Disney and HBO Max are churning out some of the best TV content at a fraction of the subscription price, of course consumers are gonna bail on you. But then, rather than making sure that its core audience sticks around for the long haul, it seems like Netflix just continues to make bizarre decisions by removing incredibly popular shows like Friends and The Office from its service. In fact, many fans are even calling the service out for canceling cheap but successful shows due to budget constraints. However, if you can afford to spend $270 million on Season 4 of Stranger Things, those statements kind of lose credibility. And of course, we've also heard about potential plans for a cheaper subscription tier that has ads in it. At that point though, isn't that just cable TV? Are we really going back in time? Surely Netflix would have learned this lesson from its own battle with Blockbuster all those years ago. And honestly, if the streaming service doesn't figure out its problems soon, we could be looking at a sinking ship here. What do you think? Do you think that Netflix needs to pay more attention to its cult classic shows rather than splurging on something like Stranger Things? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos just like this. See you in the next one.